The Pumpkin Test. A young prince, the heir apparent, was worried that he would not make a good king. And he really wanted to be a wise one like his father. And so he thought he should find out what the people in his kingdom wanted. He went riding to each town and village in the kingdom. After many days of travel and meeting people, the prince was on his way back to his castle when he rode his horse deep into the woods and lost track of his companions. The prince came upon a hut surrounded by a garden. Tending the garden was a young girl. The prince asked her, "Tell me, lass, what do you grow here?" She replied, "I am raising pumpkins." The prince was very hungry and asked for something to eat. The girl replied, "I could cook a meal right now, but I have to water the plants. Would you water the garden for me?" The prince looked at the golden yellow pumpkins laid out in rows around the cottage and thought, "How hard could this be?" He said to the girl, "Go on, cook the meal. I will water your garden." The water for the garden had to be brought from a stream far inside the woods. The prince realized that he did not know how to balance buckets filled to the brim. Walking the long wooded path with two heavy buckets was quite difficult. He was not good at watering plants either. After half a day's work, he sat among the overwatered pumpkins, his royal robe splattered with mud, and wondered how the girl could manage. The girl, in the meantime, had cooked him a delicious meal. On the ride to the palace, he rode slowly and in serious thought. The young girl had shown him that there was still a lot to learn before he could become a worthy king. Why had no one ever taught him how to cook, or grow plants, or carry buckets of water? Back in the castle, he went up to his father and the advisors and announced, "Father, those who live in the palace do not know everything about how the people really live. I want to appoint advisors from the villages and towns." The king thought this was a very smart decision. The only question he asked was, "Are you sure they can give good advice?" The prince thought of the young girl and decided to set a test to see if she was as wise as she was competent. The prince ordered a soldier to carry to the girl a glass jar, one with an opening at the top not much more than 1 inch across. The soldier's orders were to tell the maiden that the jar was from the prince, and that she was to put an entire pumpkin inside the jar. She should not break the jar under any circumstance. Both the jar with the small opening at the top and the pumpkin must remain whole. The girl returned a message to the prince that she was certain she could do what she was asked, but that such a task might take some time. Indeed, it was several months before the girl arrived at the palace. In her hands, she held the same jar, and an entire pumpkin sat inside of it. When the prince closely examined the jar, he confirmed that the jar was the same one that he had sent. It bore the royal emblem. What's more, he saw that both the jar and the pumpkin were completely undamaged. Nobody could figure out how she had done this. The girl revealed that she had placed a pumpkin bud, one that was still attached to a vine in the ground, inside the jar through its small opening. Over time, the pumpkin bud grew into a full-sized pumpkin. When the pumpkin filled the jar, she simply cut off the stem and delivered the jar with the pumpkin to the palace. The prince was convinced. He immediately asked the girl to be his first advisor when he became king. The girl accepted. When the prince was crowned king, the people rejoiced, and his father was sure that the kingdom was in safe hands. Sure enough, the king, with the help of his advisor, looked after the country for many years.